Dorothy had lived in the old craftsman house on Maple Street for 37 years. She'd raised 2 children there, buried a husband, and watched the neighborhood change from young families to quiet retirees like herself. The house had good bones, her late husband Thomas used to say. But lately those bones were showing their age. The kitchen lights had been flickering for weeks. At first, she'd ignored it, the way you ignore a creaky knee or a name you can't quite remember. But when the overhead fixture started buzzing like an angry wasp, she knew it was time to call someone. Robert came recommended by her neighbor Helen. He was a local electrician, maybe in his early 50s, with kind eyes and work-worn hands that reminded her of Thomas. He arrived promptly at 9 on a Tuesday morning, toolbox in hand and a genuine smile that made her feel less foolish about the whole thing. "Don't you worry, Mrs. Hoffman," he said, setting up his ladder beneath the fixture. "Old houses like this, they just need a little attention now and then, like all of us, right?" Dorothy offered him coffee, which he politely declined, and she settled into her chair by the window with her own cup. Watching him work, there was something comforting about having another person in the house, even a stranger. The silence had grown so loud since Thomas passed. Robert worked quietly, methodically unscrewing the old fixture. Dorothy found herself telling him about the house, the way people do when they're comfortable, about the Christmas morning when their son had ridden his first bicycle, right through this very kitchen, about the time they'd repainted these walls together, Thomas getting more paint on himself than the surface. "Sounds like you built a beautiful life here," Robert said, not looking down, focused on his work. Then everything changed. The electrician froze mid-repair, his face draining of color. He whispered, "Get out. Don't tell your..." But he didn't finish. His hands trembled as he descended the ladder, not in panic, but with the careful control of someone trying very hard not to alarm another person. "Mrs. Hoffman," he said softly, "I need you to step outside with me for just a moment. Bring your phone." Dorothy's heart quickened, but something in his gentle tone kept her calm. She did as he asked, following him out to the front porch. The morning air was cool and sweet with the scent of her neighbor's jasmine. Robert took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "Ma'am, I found something in your ceiling that concerns me. Not electrical, but I need to be honest with you. There's black mold up there. Quite a bit of it, actually. It's been growing behind your drywall, probably for years." Dorothy felt her legs weaken, and Robert guided her gently to the porch chair. "Now, it's not an emergency this very second," he continued, sitting on the porch rail to meet her at eye level. "But it needs attention. Mold like that, it can make you sick over time. Explains some things, maybe. Been feeling tired lately? Any breathing troubles?" She had, actually. Her doctor had mentioned her blood pressure, suggested she was still grieving, adjusting to living alone. It had never occurred to her that the house itself might be making her ill. "I wanted to get you out of there before I said anything," Robert explained. "Didn't want to frighten you, but I couldn't in good conscience just fix your light and leave without telling you." What happened next surprised them both. Dorothy began to cry, not from fear, but from a strange sense of relief she couldn't quite explain. Robert pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her without a word. "I'm sorry," she said, dabbing her eyes. "It's just, Thomas always took care of these things. I've been so worried about maintaining this house alone, afraid I'd miss something important. And I did miss it, didn't I?" "No, ma'am," Robert said firmly but kindly. "This isn't something you could have seen. It was hidden. That's what mold does. It hides in the dark places until someone goes looking." He sat with her for a while, not rushing, just present. Then he made a phone call to someone he knew, a remediation specialist who owed him a favor. Within an hour, They had someone coming to assess the situation that very afternoon. I'm going to make sure they treat you fairly, Robert said. My wife always says I'm too soft, but I believe in looking out for people, especially when they remind me of my own mother. Over the next few weeks, Robert became more than just an electrician. He checked in on Dorothy, made sure the remediation company did right by her, helped her find a place to stay while they cleaned the house. His wife Susan brought over casseroles and sat with Dorothy, sharing stories about their own grown children. When Dorothy finally returned home, the house felt different, lighter somehow. The walls had been opened up, properly treated, and carefully restored. Robert had insisted on doing the electrical work himself, refusing to charge her for his labor. You've already paid enough, he said. Let me do this. On the day he finished, Dorothy insisted he stay for coffee this time. They sat in her clean, safe kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows in a way she didn't remember seeing before. You know, she said, Thomas used to say that houses need people who care about them. But I think people need that too. You didn't have to do all this, Robert. You found a problem and you could have just told me to call someone else. But you stayed. Robert stirred his coffee thoughtfully. My father taught me that there's doing the job, and then there's doing right by people. They're not always the same thing. The job was fixing your light. Doing right was making sure you were safe. Dorothy reached across the table and patted his hand. Thomas would have liked you. As Robert packed up his tools that final time, Dorothy pressed an envelope into his hand. Inside was payment for his work, but also a note she'd written. It thanked him not just for fixing her house, but for reminding her that there was still kindness in the world, still people who looked after one another, still reasons to trust. Years later, Robert would tell this story to his own grandchildren about the time he found mold instead of faulty wiring, and how a simple act of honesty and care had blossomed into an unexpected friendship. Dorothy would eventually sell the house and move closer to her daughter, but she and Susan stayed in touch, meeting for lunch once a month. The house on Maple Street stands there still, solid and safe, a testament to the truth that sometimes the most important repairs are the ones we can't see. And sometimes, when we open up the dark places and let the light in, we find more than problems. We find connections. We find humanity. We find the simple, profound grace of one person caring for another. That's what Thomas would have called good bones. Not just in a house, but in people, in moments, in the quiet choices we make when no one's watching but our own conscience. Those are the things that last.